The prophecy revealed. In the distant reaches of the Andromeda Galaxy, a faint signal pulsed through the cosmic void, barely detectable amidst the background noise of the universe. It was a whisper, an echo from an age long past, carrying with it a message that would change the course of galactic history. On Earth, nestled in the heart of the bustling metropolis of New Avalon, Dr. Liana Novak sat hunched over her workstation at the Interstellar Communications Research Institute, ICRI. Her eyes were fixed on the holographic display before her, watching streams of data flow across the screen like digital rain. Suddenly, an anomalous pattern caught her attention, a series of rhythmic pulses embedded within the cosmic background radiation. Intrigued, Liana isolated the signal and began to analyze its properties. As she delved deeper into the data, her heart raced with excitement and trepidation. The signal was unlike anything she had encountered before. It carried an intelligence, a purposeful structure that hinted at an artificial origin. Could this be evidence of an ancient alien civilization? The implications were staggering. Liana immediately brought her findings to the attention of her superiors at ICRI. The Institute's director, Dr. Marcus Ballenstall, listened intently as Liana explained the nature of the signal and its potential significance. After careful deliberation, Dr. Wallenstall made a decision that would set in motion a chain of events that would reshape the galaxy. He assembled a team of the Institute's most brilliant minds, astrophysicists, xenolinguists, and experts in alien archaeology, to investigate the signal's origin. Leading the team was Captain Samir Patel, a seasoned explorer with a keen intellect and an unflappable demeanor. Alongside him were Dr. Novak herself, serving as the mission's lead scientist, and a hand-picked crew of specialists from across the Terran Confederation. As the team prepared for their journey into the unknown, they could scarcely imagine the wonders and horrors that awaited them. The signal was a siren song, luring them towards a destiny that had been written in the stars eons ago. Light years away, on a barren planet orbiting a dying star, an ancient temple stood silently amidst the ruins of a long-dead civilization. Its walls were adorned with intricate carvings and glyphs, telling a story of a prophecy that had echoed through the ages. The prophecy spoke of a weapon of unimaginable power, a device that could bring an end to the endless cycle of war and suffering that plagued the galaxy. It was said that the weapon was hidden away, waiting for the chosen ones who would unlock its secrets and wield its might. As the human expedition set out from Earth, guided by the mysterious signal, they unknowingly embarked on a journey that would lead them to this ancient temple and the fulfillment of the prophecy. The stage was set for a confrontation that would determine the fate of not only humanity, but the entire galaxy. In the depths of space, an ancient evil stirred, drawn by the promise of the ultimate weapon. The race was on, and the future hung in the balance. The weapon's location. The expedition ship Prometheus sliced through the inky void of space, its sleek hull reflecting the distant light of 1 billion stars. Inside, the crew worked tirelessly to decipher the cryptic signal that had drawn them to this uncharted region of the galaxy. Dr. Liana Novak pored over the inscriptions they had discovered on the ancient temple's walls, her brow furrowed in concentration. The glyphs were unlike any known language, a complex web of symbols and patterns that defied conventional translation. As Liana worked, Captain Samir Patel studied the holographic star maps that floated above the ship's command console. He traced the path of the signal, trying to pinpoint its source amidst the vast expanse of the cosmos. Suddenly, the ship's sensors blared an urgent warning. An alien vessel had dropped out of hyperspace nearby, its intentions unknown. Samir immediately ordered the crew to battle stations, preparing for the worst. The alien ship hailed the Prometheus, and a grotesque face appeared on the view screen. A Zorgax, one of the most ruthless and warlike species in the galaxy. The Zorgax commander, Kraltesh, sneered at the humans, his eyes glinting with malice. "Pitiful humans," Kraltesh growled. "You have stumbled upon a power beyond your comprehension. Surrender the location of the weapon, and I may spare your insignificant lives." Samir stood firm, his voice unwavering. "We do not know the weapon's location, and even if we did, we would never hand it over to the likes of you." Kraltesh snarled, his clawed hand clenching into a fist. "Then you shall perish, and we shall claim the weapon for ourselves. The Zorgak's empire will rule the galaxy, and all shall tremble before our might." The Zorgak ship opened fire, its energy weapons slamming into the Prometheus shields. The human vessel shuddered under the onslaught, but held firm. Samir barked orders to his crew, directing the ship's own weapons to return fire. As the battle raged, Lyanna and her team worked feverishly to unravel the temple's secrets. They knew that time was running out. If the Zorgaks obtained the weapon first, the consequences would be catastrophic. Finally, after hours of intense analysis, Lyanna made a breakthrough. The inscriptions revealed that the weapon was hidden on a remote planet called Xandar Prime, located in a treacherous region of space known as the Maelstrom Nebula. Samir wasted no time in plotting a course to Xandar Prime, even as the Prometheus continued to exchange fire with the Zorgak ship. The human vessel's superior technology and the skill of its crew eventually won out, and the Zorgaks were forced to retreat, their ship badly damaged. But the crew of the Prometheus knew that this was only the beginning. The Zorgaks would not give up easily, and they would surely be racing towards Xandar Prime with all the resources of their empire behind them. As the Prometheus set out for the Maelstrom Nebula, Samir and Lyanna found themselves grappling with the enormity of their mission. The fate of the galaxy rested on their shoulders, and the decisions they made in the coming days would shape the course of history. Lyanna couldn't shake the feeling that they were being drawn into a web of destiny, a cosmic game played by forces beyond their understanding. The prophecy had set them on this path, but where it would lead, she could only guess. Samir, ever the pragmatist, focused on the task at hand. They had to reach Xandar Prime before the Zorgaks and secure the weapon. Everything else was secondary, but even he couldn't deny the growing sense of unease that gnawed at his gut. As the Prometheus plunged into the swirling depths of the Maelstrom Nebula, the crew steeled themselves for the challenges that lay ahead. They were humanity's last hope, the only ones who could prevent the galaxy from falling into eternal darkness. The race was on, and the stakes could not be higher. On Xandar Prime, an ancient power waited, ready to be unleashed upon the universe once more. The future of all life hung in the balance, and the crew of the Prometheus would stop at nothing to ensure that it was a future worth fighting for. The perilous journey. The Maelstrom Nebula was a cosmic nightmare, a swirling vortex of gas and dust that twisted and churned like a hellish maelstrom. Navigating its treacherous depths was a feat few had ever attempted, and fewer still had survived. As the Prometheus plunged headlong into the nebula, its shields flared and crackled under the onslaught of ionized particles and gravitational anomalies. The ship shuddered and groaned, its hull straining against the immense forces that sought to tear it apart. On the bridge, Captain Samir Patel gripped the command chair, his knuckles white with tension. He barked orders to his crew, guiding the ship through the chaos with a steady hand and an unwavering resolve. Beside him, Dr. Lyanna Novak monitored the ship's sensors, her eyes darting across the holographic displays. She watched as the nebula's energy signatures fluctuated wildly, threatening to overwhelm the ship's systems at any moment. As the Prometheus delved deeper into the nebula, strange anomalies began to manifest. Ghostly apparitions appeared on the view screens, whispering in long-dead languages that sent chills down the spines of the crew. Eerie lights danced across the ship's hull, casting twisted shadows that seemed to move of their own accord. Some of the crew began to experience vivid hallucinations, their minds assaulted by visions of horror and madness. Dr. Novak worked tirelessly to find a way to shield the crew from the nebula's psychic influence, but even she was not immune to its insidious effects. As the days stretched into weeks, tensions aboard the Prometheus reached a breaking point. Crew members snapped at each other over trivial matters, their nerves frayed by the constant stress and uncertainty of their mission. Samir struggled to maintain order, his leadership tested as never before. He knew that every moment they spent in the nebula was a moment that the Zorgax drew closer to Xandar Prime, but he also knew that pushing his crew too hard could lead to disaster. Lyanna, meanwhile, found herself questioning the very nature of their mission. The prophecy had spoken of a weapon that could end war, but what if the cost of wielding such power was too high? What if in their quest to save the galaxy, they unleashed an even greater horror upon it? These doubts gnawed at her, even as she continued to work to decipher the temple's inscriptions. She pored over the ancient texts, seeking any clue that might lead them to the weapon and the salvation of the galaxy. As the Prometheus finally emerged from the Maelstrom Nebula, battered but unbroken, the crew let out a collective sigh of relief. But their respite was short-lived, for as they approached Xandar Prime, they were met by a sight that chilled their blood. The Zorgex fleet was already in orbit around the planet, their ships bristling with weapons and teeming with soldiers. The Prometheus was hopelessly outnumbered and outgunned, but Samir knew that they could not turn back now. With a heavy heart, he gave the order to prepare for battle. The crew scrambled to their stations, ready to fight and die for the cause they believed in. As the first shots were fired, Lyanna closed her eyes and whispered a silent prayer to whatever gods might be listening. She prayed for strength, for courage, and for the wisdom to make the right choices in the coming hours. For in the end, she knew the fate of the galaxy would be decided not by the might of armies or the power of ancient weapons, but by the choices of individuals. The prophecy had brought them to this moment, but it was up to them to decide what came next. And so, as the battle raged around them, the crew of the Prometheus steeled themselves for the final push. They would find the weapon, and they would use it to bring an end to the cycle of war and suffering that had plagued the galaxy for so long. Or they would die trying. The Temple of Trials. The surface of Xandar Prime was a blasted wasteland, scoured by the winds of time and the ravages of ancient wars. Amidst the ruins of a once great civilization, the Temple of Trials loomed like a malevolent sentinel, its twisted spires reaching towards the sickly green sky. As the crew of the Prometheus made their way towards the temple, they were forced to pick their way through a lethal gauntlet of traps and defenses. Energy fields crackled and snapped, disintegrating unwary intruders in a flash of blinding light. Gravity wells threatened to crush the hapless explorers into pulp, while swarms of razor-sharp drones hovered menacingly overhead. But the crew of the Prometheus were no ordinary explorers. They were the best and brightest that humanity had to offer, and they had trained for years to face challenges just like this. Under the guidance of Captain Samir Patel, they worked together seamlessly, each member of the team bringing their unique skills and expertise to bear. The engineers, led by the brilliant and unorthodox Dr. Mikhail Volkov, hacked into the temple's ancient systems, overriding its defenses and opening hidden passageways. The xenolinguists, spearheaded by the insightful and empathetic Dr. Elaravash, deciphered the temple's cryptic inscriptions, unlocking the secrets of its builders and the nature of the trials that lay ahead. And the warriors, commanded by the fearless and indomitable Sergeant Kira Nakamura, fought with a skill and ferocity that struck terror into the hearts of their enemies. At the center of it all was Dr. Lyanna Novak, her brilliant mind and unwavering determination guiding the team through the temple's labyrinthine corridors. She pored over the ancient texts, seeking any clue that might lead them to the weapon and the salvation of the galaxy. As they delved deeper into the temple, the trials became increasingly complex and dangerous. They found themselves facing not just physical challenges, but mental and emotional ones as well. In one chamber, they were confronted by holographic specters of their own deepest fears and regrets, given form and substance by the temple's advanced technology. Each member of the team was forced to confront the darkest parts of their own psyche, to face the ghosts of their past, and emerge stronger for it. In another, they were presented with a series of moral dilemmas, each more wrenching than the last. They were forced to choose between saving the lives of their crewmates and completing their mission, between sacrificing the few for the good of the many and standing by their principles, no matter the cost. Through it all, Lyanna and Samir found themselves growing closer, drawn together by the shared intensity of their experiences. In stolen moments between the trials, they talked of their hopes and dreams, of the future they wished to build together. But even as they grew closer, they knew that the greatest trial was yet to come. For at the heart of the temple, waiting for them like a malevolent god, was the weapon itself. As they finally emerged into the central chamber, they found themselves standing before a pulsing mass of energy, a swirling vortex of power that seemed to defy the very laws of physics. It was the weapon, the key to ending the cycle of war and suffering that had plagued the galaxy for so long. But as they approached it, they were confronted by a final terrible revelation. The weapon was not just a tool, but a living thing, a sentient being of unimaginable power and unfathomable age. And it had been waiting for them. The weapon revealed. The being that confronted them was a nightmare made manifest, a twisted amalgamation of flesh and machine that pulsed with an unholy light. Its voice was a sibilant whisper that echoed through the minds of the crew, promising power beyond imagining and terror beyond comprehension. "I am the weapon," it said, its words dripping with malice and disdain. "I have watched you, little creatures, scurrying about like ants in the shadow of giants. You seek to claim me, to use me to end your petty wars and squabbles. But you do not understand the true nature of the power you seek." Lyanna and Samir exchanged a glance, their hearts pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. They had come too far to turn back now, but the revelation of the weapon's true nature had shaken them to their core. "We seek to end the cycle of war and suffering that has plagued our galaxy for so long," Lyanna said, her voice trembling but resolute. "We believe that you can help us achieve that goal, but we do not seek power for its own sake, and we will not be swayed by your promises of might and dominion." The weapon laughed, a sound that sent chills down the spines of the crew. "You are fools," it said, its voice dripping with contempt. "You cannot wield the power that I represent. It would consume you, body and soul, and leave nothing but ashes in its wake. No mortal mind can comprehend the true nature of the forces that I embody." But Samir stepped forward, his eyes blazing with a fierce determination. "We are not mere mortals," he said, his voice ringing with conviction. "We are the inheritors of a legacy that stretches back to the dawn of time. We have faced challenges and overcome obstacles that would have broken lesser beings, and we will not be denied our destiny." The weapon's form shifted and flowed, the pulsing mass of energy and flesh, resolving itself into a humanoid shape. It stood before them, a being of pure light and shadow, its eyes blazing with an inner fire. "You are brave," it said, its voice now strangely resonant and almost gentle. "And perhaps you are right. Perhaps there is more to your species than I had first believed. But the power that I represent is not a toy to be played with. It is a burden, a responsibility that will test you to your very limits." Lyanna and Samir looked at each other, a silent understanding passing between them. They knew that the weapon was right. The power that it offered was not something to be taken lightly. But they also knew that they had no choice. The fate of the galaxy depended on them. "We are ready," Lyanna said, her voice steady and clear. "We will bear this burden, no matter the cost. For the sake of all those who have suffered and died in the endless wars that have plagued our galaxy, we will take this power and use it to forge a new future." The weapon nodded, a strange smile playing across its luminous features. "Then take it," it said, holding out its hand. "Take the power that I offer and use it wisely, for the fate of the galaxy now rests in your hands." Lyanna and Samir reached out, their fingers interlacing as they grasped the weapon's outstretched hand. And in that moment, they felt a rush of power unlike anything they had ever experienced before. It was a fire that burned through their veins, a lightning that danced across their skin. It was the power of the universe itself, the fundamental forces of creation and destruction, of life and death. And with that power came knowledge, a deep, fundamental understanding of the nature of the universe and the role that they were to play in shaping its destiny. They saw the threads of fate that bound all things together, the intricate web of cause and effect that stretched across the vastness of space and time. They saw the wars that had raged across the galaxy, the countless lives that had been lost in the endless cycle of violence and retribution. And they saw the future that could be, a future of peace and prosperity, of unity and understanding. But they also saw the dangers that lurked in the shadows, the ancient evils that had been waiting for this moment, the dark powers that sought to claim the weapon for themselves and use it to unleash untold horrors upon the galaxy. And so, as the crew of the Prometheus gathered around them, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, Lyanna and Samir knew that their journey was far from over. They had claimed the ultimate weapon, but the true battle was yet to come. The final decision. The Zorgex fleet hung in the skies above Xandar Prime like a swarm of angry hornets, their ships bristling with weapons and teeming with soldiers hungry for battle. On the surface below, the Temple of Trials pulsed with an otherworldly energy, the air thick with the scent of ozone and the crackle of power. Inside the temple, Lyanna and Samir stood before the weapon, their bodies wreathed in a nimbus of shimmering light. They could feel the power coursing through them, the knowledge and understanding that the weapon had granted them burning in their minds like a supernova. But they also knew that time was running out. The Zorgax would not wait forever, and the longer they delayed, the greater the risk that the enemy would breach the temple's defenses and claim the weapon for themselves. Samir turned to Lyanna, his eyes searching her face for any sign of doubt or hesitation. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice soft but urgent. "Once we do this, there will be no turning back." Lyanna nodded, her jaw set with determination. "I'm ready," she said, her hand tightening around his. "We have to do this. For the sake of the galaxy, for the sake of all those who have suffered and died in these endless wars. We have to end this once and for all." Samir smiled, a fierce, proud smile that lit up his face like a beacon. "Then let's do it," he said, turning to face the weapon once more. "Let's show the Zorgax what happens when you mess with humanity." Together, they reached out, their hands clasping the weapon's glowing core. And in that moment, they felt a rush of power unlike anything they had ever experienced before. It was like holding a star in their hands, like wielding the force of a supernova. They could feel the weapon's consciousness merging with their own, its ancient wisdom and knowledge flowing into their minds like a river of light. They saw the galaxy as the weapon saw it, a vast tapestry of life and death, of creation and destruction, all woven together in an intricate dance that spanned the eons. And they knew what they had to do. With a thought, they unleashed the weapon's power, sending a shockwave of energy rippling out across the planet's surface. The Zorgax ships in orbit above shuddered and cracked, their hulls splintering like glass under the onslaught of the weapon's might. On the ground, the Zorgax soldiers screamed in agony as the weapon's power tore through them, stripping away their armor and their flesh like paper in a storm. They fell to the ground, writhing and twitching, their bodies consumed by the searing light of the weapon's wrath. But even as the Zorgax fell, Lyanna and Samir knew that their work was not done. The weapon's power was too great to be wielded by any one species, too dangerous to be left unchecked. And so, with heavy hearts, they made their final decision. They would use the weapon to end the war, to bring peace to the galaxy at last. But they would also ensure that the weapon could never be used again, that its power could never fall into the wrong hands. And so, as the last of the Zorgax ships exploded in a shower of sparks and debris, Lyanna and Samir turned the weapon upon itself. They poured all of their strength, all of their will, into a single, final act of destruction. The weapon shuddered and cracked, its core splintering into a million shards of light. And then, with a final, blinding flash, it was gone. Its power dissipated into the void like a dream upon waking. In the silence that followed, Lyanna and Sanger stood hand in hand, their bodies battered and bruised, but their spirits unbroken. They had done it. They had ended the war, had brought peace to the galaxy at last. But they knew that their journey was far from over. The galaxy was a vast and wondrous place, full of dangers and challenges that they could scarcely imagine. And they knew that they would face those challenges together, side by side, for as long as they lived. For they were the inheritors of a legacy that stretched back to the dawn of time. They were the guardians of the galaxy, the protectors of all that was good, and just and true. They were human, and they would never surrender.